So when Daniel Jones actually looks like a Pro Bowl quarterback, Saquon Barkley leaves a team and actually wins a Super Bowl ring, and your team decides to go 0-3 for the sixth time in the last 13 seasons, if you're a New York Giants fan, you have to be absolutely outraged at this point. It is just as clear as water is wet that the New York Giants organization, after watching Brian Daboll go 9-7-1 and then begin to slip, he goes 6-11, and then he goes 3-14. What is it about that trend line that suggested anything would be different at all if you brought back Brian Daboll as your head coach? Was it, we're going to go out and get Russell Wilson to be our starting quarterback? He has a quarterback rating right now below 80. Daniel Jones, on the other hand, has a quarterback rating of 111. Look, simply put, yeah, I don't call for people to lose their jobs, but the New York Giants organization should have moved off of Brian Daboll. The reality is, in the National Football League, some coaches are just better coordinators than they are actual head coaches. So if you're a New York Giants fan, I feel for you. If you're a New York Giants fan, you should also be absolutely outraged at this point. Hey, guess what? Over the last 13 seasons, you've started 0-3, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 times. During that same 13-year stretch, your team has actually only gone 2-1 twice, which means you have had horrible starts, if you will, in 11 out of 13 seasons with your favorite New York Giants team. So you might be wondering, well, whose fault is that? Is it the head coach's fault? Is it the organization's fault? Well, you can certainly point a lot of fingers at a lot of people that are still there and who have since left the organization for sure. But if you're looking for anyone to blame, at least this minute, it is clearly the fact that Brian Daboll, and I never call for people to lose their jobs, is actually still the head coach of your football team. Look, at the end of the day, Brian Daboll had a great start to his career as a head coach. Remember when he won the NFL Coach of the Year award back in 2022? Usually, when a coach wins that award, their team wins 12 plus games. But no, not Brian Daboll. He got the award when they finished 9-7-1. Do you remember what happened the year after that? The Giants actually finished 6-11. And what about the year after that? This is last season. You guys finished 3-14 and decided you were going to completely ignore the fact that you went ahead and traded away Saquon Barkley, and Saquon ended up actually walking away with a Super Bowl ring. Look, at the end of the day, Brian Daboll's missteps have been well documented at this point. But if you are a New York Giants fan, seriously, how absolutely outraged are you at this point? All right, welcome back to The Sleigh. As always, I'm Dave Daboll, coming to you from the Silicon Valley. On today's show, I really wanted to sort of get into the mindset of the New York Giants organization, the Giants fans, and I'm trying to I just want to have a conversation with you, really. Why is it that Brian Daboll still has a head coaching job in the National Football League with your New York Giants? What is it about his last 3 years there that encouraged you to believe that Brian Daboll was actually going to be able to turn things around? Like in the stock market, you'll look at 52-week highs, you'll look at what's happened during the last 3 months, and then you'll go back 3 years and see where the stock was and how it's actually performed. In this particular case, if you were to conclude that Brian Daboll is a stock, you'd actually look at his stock and say his stock price was running at about $7.50 3 years ago. Then 2 years ago, the price for that stock actually fell to $4. And Last year, it fell below $2 and is about to actually be delisted. But yet, the New York Giants organization thought, for whatever reason, it was a good idea to actually bring Brian Daboll back. Look, 3-14 after a 6-11 and 9-7 season is enough of a reason to actually let somebody go, as well as watching what Daniel Jones has actually done through his first 3 games with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, for those of you that don't remember, when Daniel Jones was actually let go, he ended up as a third-string quarterback last season for the Minnesota Vikings. He spent some time with the real quarterback whisperer and won KOC. And what has Daniel Jones accomplished? His quarterback rating right now through the first 3 games of the season, which, by the way, he has no interceptions or fumbles at this point, is 111. If you look at what Russell Wilson's quarterback rating is through the first 3 games, it's 78.5. 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and quite possibly the worst 4 passes at an end of a football game in the red zone that I've ever actually seen before. Like, if you watched all of last night's game, and a lot of people in the stands had had enough and went ahead and bailed, but if you actually watched it like I did on television all the way through to the end, you saw the Giants find a way to actually get down to the 5 or 6 yard line towards the end of the game. It was just a 2-score game at that point. And Russell Wilson had the 4 worst throws, I think, in the history of the red zone. In fact, the last throw actually went off of the uprights. Look, at the end of the day, when we're talking about this New York Giants organization, it's clear. It's clear to me, and it's clear to a lot of people, that the problems aren't always with just the coaching staff. A lot of times the problems are on the management side of the fence. But those management problems can be overcome if you get lucky and you actually bring in the right head coach. For God's sakes, Kevin Stefanski actually won Coach of the Year with the Cleveland Browns. Now, we know how bad the Cleveland Browns are at this point, and I'm telling you right now, I'm sure Kevin Stefanski is going to be an offensive coordinator within the next 10 months, as opposed to actually being a head coach. You know, it's not a knock on Brian Daboll. Not everybody's a really great head coach in the National Football League. In fact, there are very few great head coaches in the National Football League. And on top of it, there are very few head coaches in the National Football League that actually make it past their 3rd or 4th season with a particular team. And it's usually because they are not able to motivate the ingredients that they're actually handed. Look at Mike Tomlin. Why is it that the Pittsburgh Steelers are always either in or on the verge of actually making the playoffs? Sure, the Steelers haven't really gone too far at all in recent years, but they've still at least been in there. Look, the Minnesota Vikings for years were most proud of their playoff appearance sign that they used to hang up proudly at the old Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome. So when I think of Brian Daboll and I think of this New York Giants organization, it was as clear as water being wet that Brian Daboll should have been removed as the head coach. Because when a head coach goes from a 9-7 record to a 6-11 record, followed up by a 3-14 record, it is really clear to everybody. Now, in terms of should Jackson Dart actually be the starting quarterback for the New York Giants at this point, I'd say why not? Why not take a shot? And of course, Daboll came out a little bit earlier in the day and basically said, we're considering every option we have at this point. And if I were the Giants, and if I were the Giants organization, and if you are a New York Giants fan, and you're serious about actually salvaging this season, I think a move at head coach is probably needed sooner than later. All right, love to know your thoughts and opinions. Please go ahead and drop them in when you have a chance. Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Sleigh. As always, I'm Dave Daboll, wishing you good luck and enjoy the rest of your sports viewing day.